few green leaves so the children can feed the goats. The young herders in Abagele, in Ethiopia's Tigray province, are hungry themselves. If the goats die, they'll have no animals to sell at market, so no money to buy food. The land is parched as far as the eye can see. The rains failed, and so did the harvest. The children's mothers set off to look for food, walking past the debris of the civil war that ravaged Tigray for 2 years. It's a deadly combination, drought and war, that, as Ethiopians know only too well, brings famine in its wake. Pregnant women are amongst the most vulnerable to the perils of both war and hunger. Her husband is weak and hungry and no longer has the strength to be a farm labourer. Anyway, there's no work. All they have to eat is a small basket of dry corn kernels. The National Ombudsman says nearly 400 people have recently starved to death in northern Ethiopia. Millions need food aid.
خازجن بقى أنتي هم الخنوع حمام حدير نقدي خاز بقى أخا يتسافر إخوانس لك كفيلك كسرح لا مسرح سانو هذا سيلك كفيلني وهكا سيلهم جاي بقى خلا تدارون الحر مواساوس الحيل بخلا بتميتهون بتيخون خلا الحر أتيوكا ميت هذا لها.
Fighting between ethnic groups has forced some people to flee to Abagele, even though there's nowhere for them to stay. Aid agencies say 1.5 million people in Tigray are in immediate need of food aid. They add to those displaced by a war between the central government and the Tigrayan authorities that started in 2020. Although a peace deal was agreed in 2022, many Tigrayans feel the government in Addis Ababa still sees them as the enemy. They're angry that the Ethiopian Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, recently went to Rome to receive a medal from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization for his contribution to rural and economic development.
As I accept this very prestigious award, I would like to emphasize my government's commitment to not only meeting zero hunger goals, but to achieving food sovereignty and attaining national prosperity.
This week, the Prime Minister's office put out a video. Ethiopia, land of abundance. No pictures of the barren wastes of Tigray, as Abiy refuses to acknowledge the impending famine and to allow in enough aid. At the Yechila Primary Hospital, they're seeing more and more malnourished children, like 2-year-old Abaynesh. Her father says her mother was too malnourished to breastfeed her. After 2 weeks in the hospital being given milk, he's hopeful she'll recover. But the resources at the hospital are pitiful. The World Food Programme and USAID have only just restarted food aid after suspending it last year because so much was being stolen by government officials and soldiers. Children suffer for the greed and dishonesty of adults.
كبيد استحلالها حسرت مجويدما complicated malnutrition نانسوا العلسمانية ذا أخلي يوم دقيسة متحكيهم ستون كع ولا مطيع لنا مستقار سنة وزي نعز حجزنا نشتاق قلنا قرقنا زي أخلي أخونا جزء مسكودو تمليش الموضوع كوبنا قر كتخطر له خمي عينة ولدي أخ تفري نشتغل.
Back in 1984, the same twin perils of war and drought led to this. More than 500,000 died, mostly children, before the world mobilized to send food aid. You won't see such terrible scenes in Ethiopia yet, and that's the point. There's still time to stave off the worst, to stop hunger leading to starvation. Desalenta Kele was a young man then. He doesn't forget.
برقص أب 7 خبيد درقنا يريشوا درقنا يريو تماساسالي ناي وق زعم زع زمثلوا النيرو جنسيلو حدا قص ينيرنا شعو حدا قص ينيرو خذ جن سيلو ملك عليه ولص أجن بإنساساديو بمايديو بتميت بكل عينات أمس أبي بتقرر له زهزي مالتيو الجلس بزي أبزي أجرو كوس أي زي على بهال درجة لا ليبصح لدرجة بس إحنا هنا مالتي.
In 1984, the world eventually rallied to the cause of starving Ethiopians. But this time, governments are distracted by the crises in Ukraine and Gaza. Few are paying attention to what's happening in Ethiopia.
Lindsay Hilson reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Getachew Reda, president of the Tigray Interim Regional Administration, and I began by asking him about the current humanitarian situation.
The current situation is characterized by people not being able to feed themselves in many parts of Tigray, essentially because of the war that has destroyed not only lives, hundreds of thousands of them, but also, more importantly, livelihoods. And people who have suffered as a consequence of the war are now facing the wrath of nature.
The Prime Minister spoke just the other day as he received an award for his contribution to economic and rural development of his country's absolute commitment to zero hunger goals. I just wonder what you make of that.
Well, I have nothing against the Prime Minister making a commitment to zero hunger. My only issue is that while that promise is something that we have to wait until it becomes a reality tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the reality remains on the ground, especially where I am in Tigray, that people are starving today, not necessarily because they are not able to produce, but more importantly because they have been denied the opportunity to produce.
What is the situation with aid? Because we know, as you suggest, millions need food aid across the country. Yet we also know that soldiers on all sides, including Tigrayan forces, have been accused of stealing some of that aid. Is your administration part of the problem, do you think?
Well, look, this allegation has been flying around, of course. About 10 months ago, when I took charge of the interim administration, one of the first order of my administration was to see that these allegations were investigated and those who were involved in stealing food were held to account. We have so far made an investigation into this, and we have been able to charge about 500 people for stealing aid. We have held many people to account and will continue to cooperate with international agencies.
I mean, people are beginning to draw parallels with 1984, the terrible famine, which then grew also out of that terrible double assault of conflict and drought. How can this be prevented this time?
Drought is something that nature could bring about. And famine essentially is about governments not being able to address such an issue. And if what the Prime Minister had to say in Rome is anything to go by, it is his responsibility, our responsibility, to see to it that this unfolding famine doesn't end up killing thousands, if not millions. Because if we fail to address this problem in time, whatever happened in 1985 would pale in comparison to what would happen now.
I mean, Ethiopia's federal government denies there's a famine in the region and accuses you of politicizing the crisis.
Well, look, whatever the protestations in the federal government there, I have every reason to believe that the Prime Minister, despite his reluctance to use the F word in public, he, at least of late, my conversations with him seem to suggest that he wants to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. But I will continue to insist that it is not going to be helpful for a government to continue to deny the fact that people are dying of hunger. I'm in charge of the region, and I see my people dying of hunger. And I don't expect anyone from Addis Ababa to tell me that people are not dying from hunger. That's the fact on the ground.
Getachew Redda, thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Please like and subscribe to ARRI Live 360.